Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tuesdays with Trailblazers, brought to you by TechEdge AI, the video podcast where we bring you the latest trends and insights in AI and technology. I'm your host, Siddesh, and today we have with us Brian McLaughlin, CEO at Orange Logic. Through his platform, he provides powerful digital asset management to increase control, creativity, and commercial advantage. So, without further ado, let's welcome Brian. Hey, Brian, how are you doing today?
Fantastic! Thank you so much for having me on the podcast here. It's a wonderful topic, and look forward to the conversation.
Likewise, Brian, we're keen to understand what wonderful insights you have for us. So, first things first, Brian, I'm sure our audience would love to know your journey, right? What paved the way to Brian McLaughlin being the CEO at Orange Logic and the struggles and challenges that come with it?
Absolutely, for sure. It's been 25 years in the making. I kind of feel like this was my dream job I've been looking for a long time. But I joined Orange Logic just over 2 years ago. Was brought in by the founder, Carl Fakreden, who wanted to move to more of a board level position and bring in somebody new. This happened shortly after receiving an investment from Brigal Sagemont, and they went to market and searched for a new CEO, and we had a chance to come together. I've spent 25 years in leadership roles in SaaS businesses, software as a service, and transformation-based businesses, and have played a lot of different roles, marketing roles, sales roles, customer service, technology roles, etc. And the last several gigs have had a chance to really come in and work to transition with the founder and take the business to scale. This one in the digital asset management space, which I've been certainly knowledgeable of for many years because I've used DAMs and I've had a chance to be on the user community side of things. But my real journey is around digital transformation and SaaS businesses and scaling those going forward here, which I have the opportunity to do here at Orange Logic.
There's a lot of wisdom that comes with 25 years of experience. So I'm pretty sure, there have been a lot of things that have been in your favor, and you've seen a lot of things, struggles and challenges across your journey.
Yeah, I've learned a lot about what to do and what not to do well just through the years. That's for sure. After that, you kind of learn all the different parts and pieces and how they come together, and you learn from your mistakes as much as you do on the successes, for sure.
Absolutely. Live with that phenomenon. Now, let's start with a scenario that's becoming more common, Brian. When a legal team first realizes their marketing department has been using Gen AI without proper documentation, what's usually the first question they ask that no one can answer?
So when a legal team basically realizes that there's no governance, there's no structure behind it, the first question to ask is, what's the risk? And should we be doing this at all? And what's the risk? And we typically see a lot of blind spots that are out there that are when you look at large organizations and marketing in particular, you see a lot of blind spots in terms of how they're using it. And we're seeing kind of three key themes behind the blind spots. A lot of teams are testing AI without an objective-based strategy. We all, I think, saw the MIT study that came out end of last year that 95% of Gen AI projects fail. And CEOs are very quick to say, I want more AI, but they don't really do a great job of defining the intended outcome. Based upon all this, I would argue that without a dam, you're really not going to have an effective AI delivery strategy. It's foundational. So that's the first one. The second, I think, when you look at it in terms of blind spots, is a lack of true ownership for AI delivery, and in particular for the governance. And we'll talk about that. And the last one related to governance is that manual processes don't scale. You may put in the best process known to man, but if it's manual and it requires users, and a lot of times creative types that don't enjoy the administria, it's going to fail. So it takes modern tools, whether it's Agentic AI or others, workflows or others, to help protect the enterprise from these risks. We are seeing massive adoption in terms of AI, but governance really hasn't kept pace. We did a recent poll across our users, and we found that less than 30% actually have an active AI governance strategy today. Marketing assumes IT is managing it. IT assumes legal has it under control. Legal assumes there's a system that's capturing. And as we see this, millions and millions of AI generated assets are moving through the workflows with no real discernible audit trail. So teams are rapidly innovating. The frameworks are foundational. These don't scale. And I think that's what you're seeing and feeling right now in terms of some of the shortfalls that are out there.
Got it. Now you just said that most brands can't answer basic provenance questions when content goes out the door, right? So, what's the moment when that stops being a theoretical risk and turns into a real crisis?
I think the risk, we're still early in the risk cycle, right? We've seen government regulations kick in. We've seen obviously lots and lots of legal battles now going on, starting with the model developers, but now kind of transcending into the users. I think we're still early, but as we all know, AI moves at a pace that we've never seen before in technology. We've never seen before in business. So governance matters right now, I think even more so than the models. Models can come and go, right? We integrate to nearly 100 different large language models for our customers. Governance can't come and go. It has to maintain, it has to sustain. You can choose the most compliant model available without a governance workflow, one that documents and reviews and enforces rules at scale, you're still highly exposed. And this matters not just what the model produces, but how that output is captured and approved and secured and used. Governance can transform AI from this creative accelerator into a responsible enterprise ready capability. And that's what this has to be. It has to be enterprise grade. That's becoming a strategic imperative, not just a technical detail for these enterprises. Otherwise, we'll lead to trouble. We all know anytime, again, a new regulation gets passed or you start to catch wind of some new risks for businesses, a flood of lawyers come in and they're going to attack the largest fish in the pond. And what's happening now is we're starting to see that as a single instance of copyright or a single instance of talent rights get violated. It turns something very small into something very big financially, but also from a brand reputation perspective. And we're just on the beginning of that.
Got it. Now, you just spoke about regulations, right? Now, we would love to discuss the EU AI Act. There's a lot of noise around it, so it's no longer hypothetical. It's kind of being enforced. So, what's one specific requirement in that regulation that most marketing teams are completely unprepared for right now?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at regulations in the EU, and who knows, U.S. will likely follow at some point. Who knows where things will go on the U.S. side? But I think the industry will drive a lot of that behavior in the U.S. industry, North American industry. But the EU, it's really moving this governance piece from important to existential. Again, we're seeing a flood of lawsuits and we're seeing massive fines and penalties, and let alone the brand reputational damage if you don't comply. The EU AI Act really focuses on two big things: a risk assessment and transparency, right? And I think companies it's no longer a nice to have, it's they must oblige. Both of these, risk assessment and transparency, require a governance framework and tools to truly comply at scale. The compliance now extends beyond the asset itself into the context within the process that created it. So not only, if you're a marketer, do you have to demonstrate, oh, I've got some content here, but you have to say when AI was used, what safeguards were followed, what risks are there with bias, misinformation, or right conflicts. How have those been mitigated? That's a responsibility now of marketers. I mean, you think 2 years ago, none of those concerns were even out there to any great degree. Now they're all front and center. So, and we've seen it here, like platforms like LinkedIn and YouTube and Instagram are already rolling out their AI disclosure requirements. It's going to be more and more important. It's this transparency and this risk assessment of the models themselves that are going to be really paramount. Again, so if you're a marketer, the question shifts from did we approve this asset? Okay, that was 2 years ago. Now to can we prove how it was made? Like that's a much more challenging question. And the gets back into how you govern at scale, right? Our platform and other modern platforms, they allow for this localized autonomy. And localization is huge to this question as well, because every country, every types of business, certain industries are regulated. They're going to have their own sub-regulations that are going to dictate what you can or can't do. And the localization is going to be a really critical factor of a governance strategy in terms of the frameworks moving forward. So we're seeing the EU trigger a lot of new behaviors, many of, and most of which are actually quite good, and I guess, can be managed in a very automated way if you use the right tools. And I'm certainly biased, but I think a dam can play a really critical component as part of that solution.
Now, you're being very clear that the issue isn't AI itself, right? So, if it's not the model, what is it actually? I mean, what are teams fundamentally misunderstanding about where AI risk really lives?
Yeah, I mean, AI, it is just another technology, right? It's just code, it's vectors and code, obviously at a very high performance level that we've never seen before, right? And AI has been around since the 50s. It's not like a new thing. It certainly is coming of age as with the launch of generative AI models like ChatGPT, OpenAI, and now so many others that are out there. So I think we're seeing the dawn of a new age of AI, but it's similar problems have existed for lots of years. I mean, there are a number of things that I think you need to look at, and we're starting to see that are really becoming major risks. Right? You've got bias and data privacy, and these are, I think, they're the most significant concerns to date. But I also think those are the first to be tackled by regulations and public backlash, right? I think we're seeing some level of mitigation. I'm not saying it's not important to address those, but we're seeing a lot of regulatory, whether it's local or, again, federal, that are going after those components of the risk chain. I think the age of risk that we're in right now is really around IP, right? This is an IP, whether it's from a model perspective, talent perspective, a director of a video, a brand maker, whatever it might be. These are all incredibly important assets that are created, and without the right IP protection and or the right level of IP understanding, lots of people can get into trouble. So what we're seeing our companies, our customers who are typically enterprise grade do, they kind of pick one of three paths, right? They either hold off on AI because it's so risky. They're like, we're not even going to do AI. And 2 years ago, even a year ago, that was probably about 30-40% of our customers that were saying, I don't want to deal with this because it's too risky. Or they use AI and they allow for more of an ad hoc or kind of a manual governance platform to emerge. This one, candidly, is certainly the most risky. It's the most dangerous, and it's one that I certainly would not recommend. The third is, and this is now up to about 30% of our hold customers and hold enterprise respondents, but they implement this governance framework and strategy, and they automate tools such as AI agents to help with the governance platform. If all this is done manually at a local level, it's not going to scale. It will create such intense workload, it'll either not get done or it will get done in a manner that can't keep up with the pace of content and delivery. So what we're seeing really is the automation process is kicking into warp speed. Like AI now is protecting us against the perils of AI. Put a wrapper around that, right? It's like students cheating on their tests. The only way that you're going to be able to, as a teacher, to detect if a student is cheated on their test is probably using AI tools. So AI is solving the perils of AI. It's like the good and the bad, right? It's the good and the evil coming together through the same technology. It's a really fascinating time we're in right now, that's for sure.
Quite an interesting take. Now, I'd love to shift the conversation towards dams, right? You've witnessed the shift from DAM as a library to DAM as a trust layer. What does a trust layer actually do that traditional DAM never did?
And I love this question, by the way. It's what we live in each and every day, right? DAM's been around for 25 years. We've been doing it for 25 years. Like great companies out there have been doing it for 25 years. Library stores assets, right? It's just a big repository. But a modern DAM can automate your governance process to scale. A modern DAM orchestrates, right? And what does it do? It provides this automation and context. So the two words I guess I would really use to draw out a distinction between a library and a more modern DAM: automation and context. The DAM can automate this governance process to scale. It can really take what's typically known as a compliance review or a brand check review or others, and it can automate that from end to end, waiting for approvals, waiting for reviews, comparing to other subsystems within the MarTech stack, whatever it might be. A single agent can do 1,000 steps that are normally manually operated. So the automation process is a big component of a modern DAM. The context is, I think, maybe the newer component of a modern DAM, and it's we really feel like a dam is very uniquely positioned to provide the context needed to optimize this whole digital supply chain. Dams are now the storytelling systems that understand the content, but then embed that understanding into the content itself. Dam serves as a system of record for the entire content lifecycle. Right? It captures the metadata on the way in. It checks to see if any transformations have happened. It enforces the rights and the brand rules. And it can do that across hundreds of agencies. Some of our large customers will use 100 different agencies, and it'll force these rights and brand rules automatically. It'll route those assets for review, and it'll wait for the review to be signed off by the proper people or the proper mechanisms. And then it'll maintain these very comprehensive audit trails. It's not a passive storage system. It's an active control layer where governance is automatically implemented. So think of DAM as kind of this unified fabric, right, for content orchestration. It's bringing all these stakeholders. It's knowledgeable of the regulations. It's applying the latest and greatest technology. Even as the content leaves the dam, we can apply a digital watermark and begin to look out as that the content gets distributed across the web or social media or whatever. We can look for illegal transformations using the digital watermarking technologies of ourselves and other customers that are out there. But it really has become, again, a critical piece of the infrastructure for competitive advantage if you want to use AI. If you're a large mid-size enterprise and you truly want to optimize AI, you have to have this critical foundational component. Otherwise, I think risk and failure will be in the future.
Yeah, I can understand why you thought this question was interesting. I could see your passion. I could see the excitement, the
It
way of
is so it's I tell you, every morning I wake up and we wake up and it's just like there's so many cool, wonderful solutions we can build, and our customers are very good at giving us feedback in terms of cool new things we can work on going forward here. So we're solving problems together with some of the leading brands that are out there.
Absolutely. Now, the next question is something I am keen to hear what your thoughts are. Right? There's an intense debate right now about which AI model enterprises should use: Claude versus GPT versus Gemini. Why is that the wrong conversation for organizations to be having at this stage? And what should they be debating instead?
Yeah, the models change daily, right? Every day, generative AI has either a new entrant or a new model or a new twist or whatever. So I would say generative AI models are going to continue to move at a very rapid pace. The large language models is the foundation of AI. They're going to continue to learn and train and get better and better and better. And then there's a generic layer of large language models that should be used, whether again it's OpenAI or whether it's Grok or whether it's Claude or others. There are lots of great foundational models, and they're all going to have their pros and cons. But the reality is, if I were one of our customers, I would not tie myself to one model at one given time because they are changing so rapidly. I would implement a tool that can integrate to tens, if not hundreds, of different language models that can allow us to strategically put those in place as we need them. For instance, we work with a large retailer, and they've asked us to implement 9 different generative AI tools at the foundation of the dam because they want to be able to transform the way the products are designed. They want to be able to transform the way that the products are merchandised. They want to be able to transform the e-commerce component of that. All these are different engines that are very good, different language models that are very good to the task at hand and their task built. So the question shouldn't be which model. The question should be what problem are we trying to solve, first and foremost. Second of all is how do we make sure that we govern and do this in a responsible way? That's the second question. And the third is how do we put in a platform or platforms that allow us to update and change and seamlessly integrate with these language models as they rapidly change. You don't want to tie yourself to any one model any given day. That is a recipe for disaster. You want to create a relationship with companies, whether it's us or others, that can add, again, or augment these models over time. Again, we've got over 100 different large language models integrated to our platform already. We're doing more and more, pretty much on a monthly basis based upon a customer who says, hey, you know what? I want to spot this particular element of an athlete so I can help them to monetize, or I want to look at this particular type of capability within the wardrobe design process, so digital design process and transforming that. It's like it's happening so fast. If you tie yourself to a single model, you will fail. So those are the major areas I'd be thinking about more than which model today.
Got it. Quite unique take and loved it, to be honest. Continuing the conversation about AI, IP lawsuits around AI are making headlines. So, where is their actual legal exposure, and do most of them even know where it is? Is the risk more concentrated than they think, or more spread out?
Yeah, I think we're just starting to get into, and it's a really good question because we're really just starting to get into this world of very hard economic risks, right? We're
Mhm.
not too late to address these things, but AI moves at warp speed, and too late is coming quickly with large consequences, right? Creators today that are violated are suing the model makers. You're seeing hundreds of millions of dollars being paid out to model makers that violate IP or digital rights without the proper information. But what's going to happen very quickly, and you look at the lawsuit trend of any new emerging technology, the users are going to be next, right? The users meaning these large enterprise companies that are using the models and using the dams. So if you're not taking that seriously as someone who's implementing AI and for content purposes, you're probably going to be next in the next year or so. We had one company, side note, Google, a great customer of ours, who realized this was a major risk and a major concern, that they wanted to avoid any type of digital rights infringement. So they put in place a very extensive set of workflows on top of Orange Dam. And now they're saving over $4 million a year just by having the strong governance and workflows. There's a major risk, but there's also a major opportunity if you do it right, like Google or others. They can get ahead of this and start to avoid those costs for a fraction of the cost. The cost of technology is a fraction of what the risk might be. So the most successful organizations are those that embed this governance right from the beginning, right? It's not just cool tools. And you can't treat it as an afterthought. It's got to be part of the implementation. So what we see out of these best in class companies is they establish the governance layer as kind of this built-in automation layer, and they build it right into their content workflows. So they lay out their workflows. They don't start with the tool, right? They don't start with the toy. They basically are saying, define our content workflows. That's the first thing we do. Then let's talk about which of this is manual versus automated. What can we automate? And then you do tool selection, again, with a foundation that can support all of those. But once you do that, now you can start to move much more rapidly with your AI capabilities, right? And these companies are getting much faster time to market, reducing this risk exposure that you so aptly mentioned, and ultimately they're able to scale the AI adoption across these global teams to gain advantage, right? Again, if you're in that first bucket where you're sitting there saying, AI is too risky, I'm not going to implement it, that's I won't say as risky as implementing AI irresponsibly, but it's darn close, because all your competitors are implementing this. And if you're not gaining 20, 30, 40% efficiency across your groups, then you're again, that's 20, 30% more cost. And not many of us in the business world can handle a 30% cost premium versus our competitors. That's a very difficult hill to climb. So we're seeing a lot of really great work being done on these fronts, but we're just still early.
Got it. Now, Brian, if TAM has effectively become the control layer for AI at scale, what happens to organizations that are scaling AI without the layer in place?
I think it's what it ends up being is it's piecemeal, it's bifurcated, it's independent systems, and ultimately it breaks down. Right? You won't be able to apply agents in the proper manner to automate your processes. You won't have a integrated, orchestrated view of all your content. So if you're making decisions based upon a partial view of the story, you're going to make the wrong conclusions. Think of, you read a 100-page book and 18 of the pages are missing. Is it the same? Is it the same book? It's not. You missed part of the story. So if you're like saying, okay, I want to apply this strategy, but I only want to do it for part of my organization, then what context are you missing? The other thing you end up with is a lot of duplicitous time, money, and energy spent, right? If you have 5 different systems sitting up here on the MarTech stack, all 5 of them are going to have their own governance process. All 5 of them are going to have their own taxonomies. All 5 of them are going to have their own metadata structures, automation processes for that. So you're going to create all this duplicitous work as opposed to having a kind of a master data strategy, master content strategy, a master governance strategy that brings it all together. So I will say 90% of our customers are moving towards federated, centralized core with federated views and lenses of the same information. So that gives individual users and groups their own look and feel, but the core critical governance components are centralized, right? I'd say centralize the most important, most regulated component. You can federate out the user look and feel. Like we just created something that we basically allow for individual users to have their own site sitting on top of the dam. So they can have their own look and feel. They can configure it however they'd like to. You could have 50 different views into the same dam using these sites. But it's at the core, the very foundation, that infrastructure, one federation model, one content structure, one taxonomy structure, one metadata. Do it once, deliver it once, measure it twice, cut it once. That's a key part of our strategy is we really feel that the deeper you get into it, that you really need that centralized model. And we're seeing more and more large enterprises benefit from doing so.
Amazing. Well, thank you for all the wonderful insights, Brian. Really enjoyed hosting in our podcast Tuesdays with Trailblazers. And thank you all for joining us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a review. Until next time, stay tuned with TechEdge AI for more insights. Till we meet again, signing off, your host, Siddesh. Thank you so much, Brian.
Thank you very much.